Hi, I'm Corina Larson. I'm a survivorship nurse and tobacco treatment specialist at Bismarck Cancer Center. Today I'm going to be talking about e-cigarettes, friend or foe. This presentation today will have an overview about tobacco, e-cigarettes or vapes, and some deceptions about these products. When you first think about tobacco, the first product that comes to mind are cigarettes. Today's products actually look a lot different. They have bright colors, they're sweet, they're sour, they're fruity, and they come in all different forms. When we look at tobacco itself as a plant, all the different processes of cutting into like chew, to snuff, to cigarettes, cigalos, the manufactured cigarette, we know that tobacco has 7,000 chemicals with 70 known carcinogens, such as arsenic, rat poisoning, vinyl chloride, and formaldehyde. Back in 1965, 42% of the population was actually smoking or using cigarettes. The data then showed a decrease by the end of 2017 of 14%. But 34 million people are still smoking. Who is smoking? Typically we see those adults of 25 to 64-year-olds, those with a lower education, below the poverty level, uninsured, disabled, and those with psychological issues. And how did things change? How do we make that change? One of the things that we do is implementing smoke-free laws, doing campaigns for education on health risks, and then also limiting the age of sales. We know that 4.47 million youth are actually using tobacco. In 2020, nearly 7 in every 100 middle school students and 23 of every 100 high school students reported current use of a tobacco product. In 2019, 1 in every 4 middle schools and over half of the high school students said they had ever tried a tobacco product. And what we were finding is actually many young people were using 2 or more tobacco products. Census was showing 1 in every 20 middle school and 1 in every 5 high school had reported a use of e-cigarettes. So we're showing like a trend of kind of going down with tobacco, but showing a trend going up in e-cigarettes. When we look at e-cigarettes, the evolution of it, in 2003, they looked like a regular cigarette, and they were manufactured as a way to cut down to quit. It had a liquid-filled cartridge, it had a device with a heater in it, a lithium battery, and they were finding that 1.2 milligrams of nicotine was actually being absorbed through a vape. Here's another slide showing the different types of e-cigarettes going anywhere from a disposable to rechargeables, refillables, and then the mods, the ones that are able to add your own different liquids. And how the e-cigarettes work is that they have what's called a cartomizer. It has a liquid area where the juice goes in. There has a heating coil that will heat up to 350 degrees Celsius, which is equivalent to 662 degrees Fahrenheit. And what they were finding is that actually e-cigarettes started becoming more popular due to some of the side effects and problems with it. One of that was showing that it was exploding into the mouth, into pants, and they were finding that there were some people who were having some injuries. Other problems that they were finding was that it was actually causing bacteria in the teeth. Propylene glycol in e-cigarettes was causing dry mouth, and the nicotine was actually starting to cause some yellowing, same as cigarettes. So we were starting to see more and more tooth decay happening. So what is the bad thing about tobacco and e-cigarettes? One of the components is there's nicotine in it. Nicotine, what it does, it actually works into the brain of part of the pleasure center. This is nothing different than food, alcohol, drugs, and also those who overexercise. It increases a stimulus in there causing pleasure. What does the nicotine do? It actually causes a high amount of addiction, and it harms the developing brain of the youth. And we were finding that 1 in 5 high school students were using e-cigarettes, along with 1 in 20 middle school were using that. And the problem with this addiction is actually creating a gateway for other types of drugs, and also substance abuse and what we call dual using, both using vapes and tobacco. So why concentrating on the youth? Well, when we look at marketing, we show pictures of how it looks really cool, it's nice and bright in color, the flavors of it as well. Back in 1980 and 1990, tobacco companies were under scrutiny and they had to start changing of how they advertise, not showing things with like how cool it was, combining it with alcohol or with food. And so that marketing had to go away. Well, when e-cigarettes came out on the market, they were actually starting to do some of those old school type of marketing, kind of appeasing towards the youth and young adults. One of the focuses we're going to talk about is Joule. What is a Joule? A Joule is actually a sleek-looking flash drive e-cigarette. It's rechargeable and it has a disposable pod. It was initially made for adults as a satisfying way to quit smoking. Why is Joule so important? Back in 2015, when Joule came out on the market, what was super revolutionary was the fact that Philip Morris, who owns Altria, which also owns Joule, had always been looking at a way to make a better product. One of the ways of making a better product was like changing the chemistry of it. And they also changed with the flavors. And they were finding from 2015 to 2017, they had increased their profit margin from 640% by the end of in 1 year. This created $2.2 million all the way up to $16.2 million in 1 year. So Joule comprised then 75% of the whole market share of all the tobacco products. Does Joule contain nicotine? Yes, actually Joule contains a high amount of nicotine. Each pod is equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes, or 1 pod has 200 puffs, so 1 puff is equivalent to 1 cigarette as well. So what we were finding is actually such a high nicotine concentration. This was causing higher health issues at an earlier age. The rest of the tobacco companies started looking at, well, hey, let's add our flavors as well, change the marketing, make it really super colorful to try to gain back some of that profit share as well. When they did an analysis of youth, they were asking, so why are you using an e-cigarette or a vape? And what they were finding, those 12 to 17-year-olds, was that actually the flavors is what seemed to entice them and lean them towards an e-cigarette versus tobacco or a regular cigarette. When you look at a regular cigarette, it actually has a very high pH, what they call an alkaline level. And so what they did was they added a benzoic acid. That benzoic acid actually converted it into an acid base. And so it had like a nicotine salt on there. A couple of things that made this really revolutionary. The fact that it actually took a very harsh tasting cigarette and made it very pleasant by changing that pH. The other thing it actually did too is with the flavors in there enticing it, there was also another way of creating a better delivery system. Because it being on an acid pH level, it actually absorbs into the mucosa of the mouth a little bit easier, and it goes to the brain a lot faster than a traditional cigarette. The problem with e-cigarettes and vapes is due to the fact that they have also some bad chemicals. I'm only going to briefly talk about just a couple of them here. There's aluminum, cadmium, silver, lead, and diacetyl. These heavy metals, actually how they present in problems with the youth or those that use them, it will cause cough, nausea, vomiting, delay of growth, nerve damage. A higher amount of nicotine actually will cause agitation and behavioral problems. One of the chemicals, diacetyl, was found in a popcorn factory. Some of the workers were having problems with having a lot of respiratory issues and finding out that they actually had some congestion and stuff into the tiny sacs. And when they looked at it by scans and biopsy, they actually found that it was this diacetyl, and they called it popcorn lung. Now, diacetyl in microwave popcorn is actually ingested in small forms and is safe to use. But again, when we take something and we take it from a liquid form into a vapor form and ingest that into our lungs, it's actually causing a permanent, incurable lung problem. So Stanford University has started doing a market analysis on the different types of e-cigarettes and vapes, their juices. And what they were finding was that actually a lot of the pods had equivalent of up to 1 pack all the way up to 9 packs of cigarette nicotine content. Some of the things that needed to be changed was the marketing, putting Surgeon General labels on things saying that it could cause cancer. FDA is still working on changing that with both e-cigarettes and vapes and their juices. But we know that some of the marketing still looks kind of false according to this one here, showing a can of Chew will not cause lung cancer. Chew has never caused lung cancer. It causes oral head and neck cancers. The other problems with COVID for 2020, also those who were using e-cigarettes or vapes, what they were finding with the youth is that they were 5 times more susceptible to having a positive COVID test and also more higher severity symptoms. Those who actually vaped and dual used, like cigarettes or Chew as well, were having a 7 times higher rate of COVID issues and severity of those COVID symptoms. In summary, e-cigarettes are not our friends. They contain high amounts of nicotine that rob our brain. They are marketed with flavors, deceiving and not safe. They cost us money, our teeth, they harm our environment, and injure our health. Here are some websites for more information. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope that this enlightens you on the dangers of e-cigarettes and tobacco. To learn more or ask any question, contact the Bismarck Cancer Center on social media or bismarckcancercenter.com.